All right, good evening. I'll call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board for Tuesday, October 9th, 2021. October 19th, 2021. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Belvin, would you read our community prayer?
Yes, sir. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, and they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Belvin. All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public? Mr. Dunham, would you like to step up to the microphone, please? We're at the end of this table.
Alan Dunham, 11 Ricard Street. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman, as Vice Chairman. I've grown quite concerned watching your board meetings over the last months and what is rapidly turning into a fiasco of hiring a new town administrator. Every one of you knew this was coming down the road back in January, that at the end of the year, a contract would be done and someone would have to be in place. Yet nothing was done in January, February, March, April, May, and finally in June, you got yourself in gear. You made a selection committee with what I thought was not really a reasonable amount of time to do their tasks, but they did it. They busted their butts and had meeting after meeting to do the best to bring you some candidates for which you could consider and vote on. It's not their fault that it only ended up as 2. They did their jobs. And they brought forward 2, and then all of a sudden, well, I really wanted 4 or 5. Unfortunately, in the real world, in real life, you don't always get what you want, and life's not fair. You have 2 candidates for the position of town administrator, and they're right now swinging in the wind. Looking at your agenda item tonight, you've got everything covered, from voting on a new town administrator, which I strongly urge you to do your job and do it, to going ahead and postponing it, starting all over to find a new screening committee. And if you do go that route, it's going to take a while, because a lot of the people that were on that committee that worked so hard, you basically slapped them upside the head and said, I'm sorry you didn't do a good enough job. And I have a funny feeling there'll be a number of them that are going to say, it's not worth the effort, if that's what we're going to end up with. So you've got a choice, the devil you know and the devil you don't know. Mr. Belvin, I know you have some problems with Mr. LaPon, and I'm not sure, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about them, and you haven't really voiced them that much. That's fine, that's your opinion. Mr. Hoffman, it seems like one of your biggest problems is that Mr. LaPon doesn't communicate effectively with the board or fast enough with the board. I would ask, have you gone ahead and approached Rick with this? If so, when? Have you gone to your chair and vice chair to address that problem? And if you have, has there been any improvement over the last couple of months? Is that enough to go ahead and go with the devil you don't know as opposed to the devil you know? Mr. Bogart, I understood your first time not wanting to vote because you wanted some more time to think about it. Well, it's been over a month now. The time to act is now. You are all elected to do a job. Run the town, go ahead and get an agenda ready for a town warrant, for town meeting, and the most important is to go ahead and hire a town administrator. I'm strongly urging you to do your job, in the words of Bill Belichick tonight. One thing I would ask, because no one cares about my opinion about which way you should go, I would just be very leery of the devil you don't know, especially one that even admitted during the interview process that he doesn't have any idea of how our emergency services work. I saw nothing that when I read through the answers to the questions to really give me a warm fuzzy that he could handle a town the size of Carver and all the complexities we're having right now. So, again, I just really strongly urge that you don't leave this meeting tonight without a selection for a new town administrator. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dunham. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to address us tonight? All right, seeing none. The next item on our agenda is public safety officials recognition and regarding the life-saving events of September 9th, 2021. Chief Ryan, Chief Dufley, would you like to come on up?
Can I remove my mask to speak?
Absolutely.
Good evening, and thank you all for joining us tonight to recognize several members of our public safety teams. We thank the Board of Selectmen for having us here tonight as well. Chief Ryan and I are extremely proud and honored to work with each and every member of our teams. Tonight, we will take a moment to shine the light upon efforts of several who went above and beyond the call of duty to save a life. This incident involved a person experiencing a medical emergency, and I would like to defer to Chief Ryan to come up and do us the honor of detailing the efforts of our police officers and EMS personnel on that particular day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Dufley. On behalf of the Public Safety Departments, the Select Board, and the community this evening, we're here to recognize the efforts made by the members of our public safety team. On Thursday, September 9th, 2021, at approximately 12:42 p.m., members of both Carver Police and Carver EMS departments were dispatched to a local business for a party that was unresponsive. The patient was found to be in cardiac arrest by the first arriving officers. Before you today, sitting in the audience, are Carver EMS EMTs Ariana Backman, Jessica Yancheski, paramedics Tim Dunham, and Plimpton Fire paramedic Mark McDonough, along with Carver Police officers Al Silva, Jeremy Farquharson, and Sergeant Dennis Rizzuto. Each, go figure, each of these public safety professionals had a big impact on the outcome on this patient care. To review the incident and how it happened, a call came into the dispatch center, again reporting that there was a party at Eagle Gas that was unresponsive. The Carver Police and EMS were dispatched immediately. Upon the arrivals of Officer Silva and Sergeant Rizzuto, they found a party who had no pulse, was not breathing. While Officer Silva began CPR, Sergeant Rizzuto went to his police cruiser to retrieve his automated external defibrillator as EMT Ariana Backman arrived on scene to assist. Those three members provided high-quality CPR, applied the external defibrillator, and it was advised to give one defibrillation. After doing such, they continued high-quality CPR per AHA guidelines and had other members arrive with Ambulance 2 with paramedic Dunham, EMT Yancheski, and Officer Jeremy Farquharson. Once they had the patient loaded into the ambulance, due to mutual aid requests, we got a mutual aid paramedic from Plimpton Fire Department of paramedic Mark McDonough. The patient was loaded into the ambulance, transported to Beth Israel Hospital. Patient had regained pulses prior to being put into the ambulance. And the crews worked together to make sure that the patient was treated continuously to maintain a good pulse, good blood pressure, and monitor the airway. The EMS staff transported with the Plimpton paramedic, Mark McDonough, on board to assist with all that care. Approximately 1 week after the patient came into the Carver Police Department Dispatch Center looking to thank those who were involved in his care. This is something that is not common in our industry. You do not often see victims of cardiac arrest resuscitated, and very rarely do we see them come back to thank those involved. Unfortunately, we are unable to reach that patient to let him know about the events this evening, so we could not invite him to participate. So there is no doubt that the members of the Carver EMS and Police Department, along with the assistance of paramedic Mark McDonough, if they did not work together as seamlessly as they did, that this outcome would not have been as well as it was. So, I then want to put it to Mr. Towns, Mr. LaFawn, if you have any statements.
I just want to thank everyone that was involved in this. This is just another example of the incredibly high-quality emergency service personnel we have in this town. And I continue to be impressed by everyone involved in all our emergency service departments. And just thank you on behalf of the people of Carver. Thank you.
And I would also say this, our emergency services are organized in a very unique manner. That being said, whether it's a, on-call fire or the unique system we have with our EMS department, I would say it's as good as any you're going to find anywhere on this planet. So I do want to thank the leadership of those departments. I think the cooperation is such that it doesn't have to be that good, but they insist on it, and it has worked well for a long time. So again, I think not just the people involved here, but certainly the leadership of those departments and people past and present who served in those departments who created such a great culture. So, thank you.
Mr. Ryan, with your permission, could I just open it up if any other members of the board have anything they'd like to say? Does anyone? Mr. Belvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, guys. I just want to let you guys know, thank you very much. Being put in the same position in the past, I know the stress and anxiety that goes through that, and you battle through it. I just ask more people learn CPR. It's a vital skill. Anyone can do it. But doing it right is the most important part. So I want to thank you guys very much.
Anyone else? Ms. Ewens?
Sure, thanks. Well, I'm just going to be redundant and say that we do have the best emergency services on the planet and the best individuals working for us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
I just want to echo everyone else's that it's a great teamwork, especially with Plimpton as well coming in. We appreciate that. But again, it's just a well-oiled machine starting from the top and going all the way down. So you all should be very proud.
All right, my turn.
Ms. Bogart?
Jumping on. Okay, basically, I'm just really proud to live in Carver, and the first responders are a huge part of it. So, that's simple.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Mr. Ryan?
At this time, and through the Carver Select Board, Chief Dufley and myself, we would like to call forward each of these individuals one at a time to present them with public safety awards for their actions taken on this day.
Saves lives and microphones. Yep.
It's cheating, standing on the stairs.
I'm never.
Okay, the first one I'd like to recognize is EMT Ariana Backman. She'll be receiving a life-saving award and a CPR Safe pin, as well as a recognition from town collector. Next person I'd like to recognize is EMT Jessica Yancheski, who will be receiving a life-saving award and a CPR Save pin, along with the recognition from the Select Board. Paramedic Tim Dunham will also be receiving a life-saving award with a CPR pin and a recognition from the Select Board. Plimpton Fire Paramedic Mark McDonough will be receiving a Life Safety Award along with a CPR pin and recognition from the Select Board. Officer Al Silva will be receiving a Life Safety Award along with a CPR Safe pin. Officer Jeremy Parkinson will also be receiving a life-saving award with a CPR Safe pin and recognition from the Select Board. And Sergeant Dennis Rizzuto will be receiving a life-saving award with a CPR Safe pin along with a recognition from the Select Board. We are all extremely proud of each and every one of these members and thank them for their service to our community. Thank you. Any chance we get everyone back up so we can do a picture?
Hang on, I'm just gonna get this out of the way.
Oh, hold on. Oh. Make sure you smile. No funny faces.
Thank you very much.
Four score and 7 years.
All right. Thank you all again. It just, one of the special things about living in Carver. All right. The next item on our agenda this evening is to ratify the dispatcher's contract. Mr. LaFond.
Yes, the contract is in front of you. You know, you just discussed it in executive session. It's essentially a cost of living, 1%, plus there's two other pieces in the contract for which the board has voted to offer compensation. One of those is specifically for the additional 911 calls. I believe the chief has documented about, I think, close to 19% of an increase in 911 calls since the new station opened, as well as some additional compensation for the fact that there's more to do in the new station. It's a nice working environment in many ways, but there's a lot of different responsibilities and security issues that weren't part of their responsibilities prior to that. So those two pieces, in addition to a cost of living, is what the board discussed and voted to approve in executive session. So at this point, we ask for you to just vote to ratify that in open session.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is the election re-precinct legal boundary descriptions approval. Ms. Dayhill? Would you like to?
Good evening. So,
Kara, talking to the mic.
Kara, could
sorry.
you just use the microphone? Thank you.
there we go, that's better. I'm here tonight because we received back the 2020 election results, census results. I'm so sorry, I'm nervous. And it was determined that we are just under 12,000 residents. It's 11,645 to be exact. And with our precincts, we currently have 3. So we didn't change anything, but what we're doing is redividing the town so that we can keep the numbers under 4,000 in each precinct. If we go over that 4,000, we'd have to add on a 4th precinct. That could mean 2 voting locations, 5 brand-new tabulators, another score of election personnel and the election equipment. It could easily be, a $50,000 to $60,000 cost to the town. So this was our best option, just to redesign the lines, and I did that with some help. I had both Dave Siedentoff and John Woods identify some of the non-visible areas, because when the state produces this to you, there are blocks that are not visible, and they don't know our town, so we needed to have some help with that. And most importantly, Kevin Forg, our health agent, he's an engineer, and he stepped right up and helped with all the legal language that was necessary to rewrite it. And as we looked at it, he discovered that the state didn't quite have it right. So we rewrote the whole thing, and that's what you guys have. So that was a huge blessing, and I have to say thank you to them for their help. So this is what you have, and I ask that you vote to accept it, because our alternative is a 4th precinct. And it would be really nice to have this done and keep it nice and neat.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the re-precincting plan created by Ms. Dayhill and the other members of the town.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion to approve the precinct legal boundary descriptions.
All right, discussion?
I
Bogart.
would like to thank Ms. Dayhill for this, because it seems like it was a huge undertaking, and I thank the people who helped you too to rewrite everything. That's an amazing job, especially to avoid having a 4th precinct. So I just want to thank you, and then please pass it along to the others who helped you. Just thank you.
Oh, I sure will, thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, obviously, I'd like to thank you too, Mrs. Dayhill. It was a big
Thank you.
job and much appreciated.
Thank you.
And I want to echo those comments. I think you and your team have done a fantastic job here, and keeping us with 3 precincts is a great accomplishment. So thank you for all your work. And please pass the board's thanks along to the team members that helped.
I will, Mark, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you once again, Ms. Dayhill.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave this. This is for you guys to sign and give it back to me when you guys accomplish it. Thank you.
Do we need to sign it in your presence?
You can, and then I'll certify it if you just want to pass it down.
Why don't we just do that right
You can
now?
have it done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
He'll be right back. Just wait down.
All right. Ms. Dayhill, are you all set with that? All right, great, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is a Chapter 61A request from the Federal Furnace Cranberry Company, 104 Tremont Street, Assessors Map 123, Lot 13. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this? Perhaps the microphone at the end of the table there?
Good evening. I'm Danielle Justo, trustee of Federal Furnace Cranberry Company, and I have here with me Annie Young, who's the project manager from Carver Solar.
All right,
And we're requesting the waiver for the notice of change in use from 28.16 acres out of our approximately 800-acre parcel from agriculture to solar farm.
all right, thank you. Questions from the board?
So, I'm sorry, did I mishear you? You said 26 acres? You're taking out?
20,
Okay, so we have 29.79. I just wanted to know what the actual number is. Okay, oh, okay. All right, so we have the potential higher number here, but it might be lower. Okay.
Yes.
That's great, thank you very much.
All right,
we can submit that to the assessor with the final number. We
Yeah.
did a meets and bounds survey recently.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, though.
all right, other questions from the board? Mr. Baldwin?
So what we've been presented here, the actual numbers may change? Is that what I just heard?
It may be a
wasn't-
smaller, what we have in the letter given to us by Janowski and Spencer attorneys, it says they want to convert 29.79 acres out of 781 acres into solar. And these ladies are telling us that it could be slightly less than 29 acres. They're still working out the boundaries with the assessor's office. But with their surveyor, I beg your pardon, right. And so the number we have is as high as it's going to go. It could be fewer acres.
I mean, I'd like to have exact figures instead of, it could be bigger, it could be smaller,
Well, it's not going to be bigger, that's what they're telling us.
Yeah, it's not going to be bigger, and I think that they've clearly identified on the plot plan, you know, what it is. It's just a question of a final survey result.
Annie, would you be able to submit that final survey to the assessor? Do you have an approximate date for that?
So did everyone hear what she said?
Mr. LaFond, is there another chair around where perhaps both of them could come up to the mic? But I don't think the people at home can hear. If they're both.
I'll just switch with you.
Sorry.
No problem. We have a draft that we're working to update right now, the survey, so we're hoping to finalize it in the next 2 weeks or so. So we can, as soon as that's done, we can certainly submit it to the assessor.
Thank you.
Actually,
Ms. Bogart.
we've discussed it in the past at meetings where the process has kind of gone backwards. I believe you've already gone through the planning board permitting process for this, and now you're coming to us to ask for the land to be taken out of 61A, and it kind of puts pressure on us to say yes. So if in the future you are doing more projects, please come to the select board first and get over the 61A hurdle before you start getting deep into site plan and special permit stuff, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Belvin.
To go along with that, it's the rationale for the 61A, allowing the Board of Selectmen, we have first right of refusal to that property, and putting us in a situation where the town may benefit by taking this property and being able to purchase the property. How can we do that when you've already gone through other boards and committees, when the first step should be coming to us? That should be the first step with 61A, and hopefully all the other property owners and solar companies out there understand that, is that you need to come to us, get rid of the 61A issue first. Let us evaluate the property, because we don't have enough time to evaluate your property, find out how much your property is valued at, and can the town purchase that property to save for future, for the town purposes. And that's what we have to look at. We have to look at the future of our town. And if there's a property that we may need for a new school, all right, 80 Makepeace in the south, if they start to create all these houses down there on Carver property, Carver land, all right, we may not have a big enough school, and we need to find someplace, all right? And we have to evaluate those different places within this town of what we can do. So, I mean, you're kind of getting the brunt of us, but it's very important to come to us first. So hopefully our town staff members in our town see this, that we have to look at the future of our town. So I understand the way this looks. It's speckled out there and a couple of different lots, areas for it, but I like all my I's dotted, my T's crossed before I sign off on anything. And like I said, that's what, I mean, if this was done prior to coming to us, then going to planning and everything else, it's just a process. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Belvin. Ms. Ewens.
I just wanted to make one comment, though. Although I agree with that process, in this particular case, it's pretty clear that we would have no interest in buying this, because the panels, it looks like they're going to be on top of bogs, and they're landlocked.
They're in between bogs?
Okay,
Not necessarily.
in between bogs and landlocked.
Yep, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ewens.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I move that we turn down our right of first refusal for Federal Furnace Cranberry Company, 104 Tremont Street, Assessors Map 123, Lot 13, for the approximately 29.79 acres to be converted to solar.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
So Mr. Hoffman, you were an aye, correct? So 3-2. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. The next item on our agenda this evening is a discussion and possible vote on Carver Cares, ARPA funds, the direction the board wants to take, and how much to allocate to specific categories. Mr. LaFond, could you just briefly touch on the categories this money could be used for?
I do not have that document in front of me at the moment. Some of the categories in general were for additional public health measures, infrastructure, premium pay or additional pay for first responders. Those were the major categories. I think one of the questions, really what it comes down to, is the fact that, unlike the CARES Act, this requires some larger policy decisions rather than more administrative decisions. So I know the board was sent by Elaine the the specific categories. Don't have that in front of me right now, I apologize, but as I say, those are the major categories. As you recall, we met with our county treasurer, Tom O'Brien, I think it was Wednesday. I'm sorry, what's today?
Yep, today is Tuesday.
Okay.
That was Monday.
So we met with him tomorrow.
No.
So while you are, so I did bring up, I just brought up the
Thank you.
the website they mentioned yesterday, the Plymouth County ARPA
Yes.
website, and that lists 6 particular categories that ARPA funds can be used for. So if you'll forgive me here while I try to look at my phone and make it a little larger. Waste and sewer infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, public sector revenue loss, premium pay for essential workers, to address negative economic impact and support the public health. And I guess I would just add, as far as the meeting with the county commissioners and Treasurer O'Brien yesterday, one thing they did stress is that we perhaps hold off for a little while in making too many decisions, because it appears like the federal government is still getting their regulations together. They haven't quite finalized everything on how these ARPA funds are going to be handled. So we just might want to keep that in mind as we discuss this. We may want to come up with some guidelines, but we may not want to make any final decisions until we have some further discussions with the county commissioners. Ms. Ewens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding, too, was on the main website there that you were looking at, there's a category that doesn't, the category itself doesn't say affordable housing, but there's one category where underneath it, it includes affordable housing, and I don't remember what that category is.
That's right, and if the people at home, forgive me for looking at my phone, but
That's okay.
that's why I'm trying to access it. I actually called Treasurer O'Brien today, because I was concerned about that when I looked, and he did say that as well. I believe it's supporting the public health that he mentioned.
Okay.
When you look under
Yeah,
there.
it's something you wouldn't think that it would go there, but obviously.
I was surprised as well,
Makes
but he
sense.
did
Okay.
say that money he believed could be used for certain projects of that nature. But again, he stressed that before we decide anything specifically, we should probably have a meeting with the county commissioners.
Okay, that sounds fair.
And circle back. Mr. LaFawn, could you touch quickly on how much money Carver expects to receive from the ARPA program?
At this point, the current earmark for the town of Carver is about $1.2 million. We have received $600,000 and change. I think we received it about 2 months ago. Those funds are one half. Next year, we'll be getting another download of half. I think it's actually within 6 months. There's no requirement to spend it, I think, until 2024, 2025, I think. So the money's going to sit in the bank for a while, but at least we don't have a deadline, for instance, as we do with the CARES Act, which is good because, as you said, because the federal government hasn't actually completed their guidelines, makes it difficult to spend money.
Yes, it does. And that's money that comes directly from the federal government to the town, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then we get some additional funding through Plymouth County?
Well, actually, correct. Plymouth County, as their own separate government, has their own distribution of funds directly to them, and Plymouth County has agreed or decided on behalf of the communities that they would distribute, using some formula, their piece to the cities and towns, or the city and towns within the county. So that's a very, again, they don't have to do that, so certainly we're grateful that they've chosen to do that. And we don't have those portion of the funds yet, but because the Plymouth County hasn't received all of their portion yet, but it's a nice gesture on their part. Unfortunately, we don't have guidelines, but fortunately, Plymouth County commissioners are willing to administer that process like they did with the CARES Act. So each community isn't on their own dealing with the federal government.
Does the money that Plymouth County receives through ARPA. Does that work similar to CARES, where we have to spend it, then get reimbursed, or is it a little different this time?
No, it's similar to the download of funds we get directly, so really in the same guidelines, which don't exist, but the same categories, and expended within the same time frame as the funds that are downloaded directly to the town.
So we don't have to spend it first? They can.
No, it's not a reimbursement program.
Great, thank you. Questions, thoughts from the board? Okay, seeing none. Perhaps this is an item best left for a little later on in the year when Plymouth County gets some more guidance from the federal government. So with that, we will move along to our next item, which is the appointment of the GATRA Advisory Board designee, Connie Kelly. Is there a motion from the board?
Look at 6:55. Can we still do that?
Yes, we can. I apologize for skipping that agenda item. Okay, so 6:55 is a vote to authorize Richard LaFond, the interim town administrator, to be the authorized representative, and to authorize Susan Moquin, the finance director, to be the authorized reporter preparer of the Plymouth County ARPA grants on behalf of the town.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, and thank you, Ms. Bogart, for bringing that to my attention. Discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. And now we will move along to the appointment of the GATRA Advisory Board designee, Connie Kelly.
I'll make a motion, we approve Connie Kelly as our GATRA Advisory Board designee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. All right. And moving right along. Next up on our agenda is a discussion and a possible vote on the appointment of a permanent town administrator, or to extend the current interim town administrator contract, to reopen the town administrator search, to make a charge, guidelines, and criteria for a new screening committee, or extend the current screening committee, or to engage in a contract with a consultant for services, open the search for a new interim town administrator. And if the board would permit me, I have a couple of thoughts I'd like to share on this before we start our discussions. And perhaps I have a compromise motion. As chair, I don't normally make motions, but I have a compromise that I think might possibly help move us forward. As I stated at the last meeting, I believe that for the good of the town, we really need to move forward here and make a decision. I also believe that with all the projects we have going on in town, most notably the Route 44 project, that this is not a good time for us to bring in someone new. So I would like to make a motion that we hire Mr. LaFond as our town administrator and offer him a short-term contract. My recommendation would be for 18 months, which would bring us to the end of the 2022 fiscal year. At the same time, I'd like to see us establish some clear goals and objectives for the town administrator. We had our goals and objectives meeting, and I think we should set some clear goals for the town administrator with written evaluations 6 months into the contract and 12 months after the start of the contract. And if somebody would be willing to second that motion, then I have a couple of thoughts I'd like to offer on it.
I second the motion.
Thank you. This is a very different board than the one that hired Mr. LaFond originally. We have different expectations, and I believe that we may not have communicated those to Mr. LaFond as clearly as we could have. Mr. LaFond clearly cares for our town. We see him all the time at community events, and I think having a town administrator like that is a big plus to the town. We also have very unique public safety setups here in Carver, with a call fire department and a self-supporting EMS department. It's going to take anyone new quite some time to get up to speed on how these departments operate and the unique challenges they face. All the public safety chiefs interact with Mr. LaFond much more than we do as a board. And I know that they all support Mr. LaFond. And to me, this is the most important thing. The Route 44 project is one of the largest commercial developments we have ever had in town. Do we really want to bring someone new into the middle of these negotiations? I just don't believe that's a good idea. I believe bringing Mr. LaFawn back on a short-term contract with some clear goals and objectives offers this board a good compromise solution, as well as providing some continuity to all the projects we have going on in town. And I ask the board to consider that. Thank you for indulging me. Discussion from the board? Mr. Belvin.
So, I understand where you're coming from, Mark. I really do. And those are some valid points. But I don't feel that I can do that. I don't think I can vote that way. No matter what happens here tonight, okay, the town's going to go on, okay? One of my questions I do has the chair or vice chair contacted Mr. Kelly at all during this time frame?
To the best of, I certainly have not contacted him. Ms. Hewens, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay, as leadership of this board, I have.
Okay.
After our original vote, that we didn't come to a conclusion, I called him, and he's still interested in working for us. After our last meeting we had, I contacted him, told him what happened, where we're at. He's still interested in working for our town. So, for those reasons, I have already stated that the information that I have personally here, as a select board member, I cannot support Rick LaFawn going forward as our town administrator.
Okay. Anyone else? All right.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Hewens.
sorry, I was giving other people a chance.
No, no worries.
I think it's a really dangerous misunderstanding, and I don't mean that to offend anyone, but I think it's a real serious misunderstanding if we think that the town will just go on. Things don't just go on by themselves. If we want to preserve our rural character, we need someone at the top who makes sure that the people who work under him or her care about our rural character. It gets lost very quickly. It doesn't just, stay rural character all by itself. That's one issue. Yes, the Route 44 project will probably continue. Will it continue in the way that we would like to see it continue? Will it still look like the Carver that we know and love? We don't know. But right now, Mr. LaFawn has that pretty well in hand, and you could go down the list. The safety departments know him and trust him, and they're the best. We have new staff here, our new finance director, our new building commissioner, who are trying to work with Mr. LaFawn to fix some stuff that really fell through the cracks before he came back. And I think it would be a really grave mistake if we don't do this. It can be, as Mark suggested, we can reevaluate it after 18 months and move on from there.
And I think, if I could just speak to the motion for a minute, I think giving him written evaluations after 6 months and 12 months gives us a real opportunity to bring forward some of the things that we talked about at our goals and objectives meetings. I think clearly the board has some issues with communications and some other things that perhaps, again, we didn't make as clear to him. This is a very different board than the board that hired Mr. LaFawn, and we have different expectations on this board than I think past boards have had. And I think Mr. LaFawn's dedication to the town, he clearly cares about the town, and I just think this would be a very poor time to to change town administrators. I truly do. And this was a very difficult decision for me, but I think the right thing to do is to bring back Mr. LaFond. And I think a short-term contract is a good compromise solution to this board. So with that, is there?
Okay,
what do you
so
want?
I always say too much.
Ms. Bogart.
I was the first one many meetings ago when I forget when started this, and when we were putting the deadline on ourselves of we need someone done, for January 1st, I said, but there are options, like potentially Ms. West and other people. But my point is, I was the first one that said, had anyone even asked Mr. LaFond if he'd stay another 6 months? I put it out there then. But what I said at the last meeting hasn't changed. And I chose my words very carefully last meeting to say, at this time, I'm not comfortable offering either candidate a long-term contract. I didn't say yes to either. I didn't say no to either. I wasn't comfortable with long-term for either of them. To me, 18 months is too long for me to be comfortable with based on what I said. To me, more of a compromise, and I don't know, to me that word just feels weird. Maybe it's just me, but I guess where I'm at in my head is that we had that facilitators meeting, and like Bob said at the last meeting, it really wasn't kind of goals oriented, just kind of more communication based. But I think I got a lot out of it, and I learned a lot about expectations for each other and with him. And this is long-winded, but I'm trying to go slow in my head. So I left that meeting hopeful that things will get better between us. I know I have to step up my game in areas. Between Rick's interaction with you or me, or collectively. So my headspace is that I'm still not comfortable with anything long-term, but I would be open to asking Rick to stay on another 6 months with the caveat, and I don't like that word either, paired with continuing a search, continuing. So I would like to see a continuation happening, but the point of being open to 6 more months is, did everything that we said or was said at that facilitation and goals thing, did any of it stick? Is anything gonna get better? The reservations that I have that aren't making me comfortable offering Rick a long-term contract, will they go away in 6 months? So I'm open to 6 more months, but not 6 more months and let's expect that to happen. It would be 6 more months, but we're continuing the search process like today.
So let me explain how I got to 18 months, and maybe that might be helpful to the board. So the first thing I looked at was the timing of the expiration of Mr. LaFond's contract at the end of December. And I believe that's a very poor time for the contract, for any town administrator contract to expire. It's at the start of budget season. It's a very busy time. I understand that resulted from a compromise on the last board when we hired Mr. LaFond, but it just seems to me to be a very poor time for a town administrator contract, any town administrator contract to expire. So I looked at it and I said, okay, when would be the best time for that contract to expire? And it seemed to me the best time would be at the end of the fiscal year, which was the end of June. So I looked at the expiration of Mr. LaFond's contract, and I looked at the end of a fiscal year, and that's how I got to that time period. I think we just went through, we did a screening committee. They worked very hard. They did the best they could. They recommended 3 candidates to us. Unfortunately, 1 dropped out, which left us with 2. I think if we were to go forward and request that Mr. LaFawn stay for a little while longer, he may or may not, I don't know, I haven't had that discussion with him, but it just puts us back where we are now. We would have to, at the end of that 6 months or whatever time period, go back, find another screening committee, and do the whole process over again that we just did. And I don't think that's helpful to the town. I don't think it's helpful to anyone. It just leads more uncertainty. And I think, again, I think sitting down as a board and establishing some very clear goals that we as a board expect, and evaluating Mr. LaFawn on a more frequent basis with written evaluations gives us a chance to evaluate him and gives us a chance to bring some of these projects hopefully to completion. 18 months is not a long time, and I think at the end of that time, we make some clear decisions. Either we continue with Mr. LaFawn if the board and Mr. LaFawn choose to do that, or we just go in a different direction. We say, thank you, Mr. LaFawn, but the board has chosen to go in a different direction, and we hire a new town administrator. But just extending the current situation for another few months, it doesn't solve anything. Yes, it keeps someone in the town administrator's office, but it puts us right back in the situation we're in right now. And I don't see how that solves anything except to move the process a few months down the road. So that's how I got to 18 months, and I really strongly feel that that's a good compromise number for the town. I think you won't find many town administrator contracts out there, and I don't even know if Mr. LaFawn would accept that contract, but you won't find many town administrator contracts that are that short, 18 months. That's unusually short for a town administrator contract, and I made it that way purposely because I knew that this board has some expectations that perhaps haven't been met. And I guess that's it. So, anyone else? Mr. Hoffman.
First of all, I just have a question. So the contract that was negotiated for the interim town administrator, why was the December 31st deadline? I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with the process at that time.
I honestly don't recall. It seems to me there were some different terms that, Sarah, perhaps you recall better than I do. It seems to me some people wanted a longer contract, some people wanted a shorter contract, and we ended up at 18 months. I don't.
Yeah, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I can bring some light to that. So our bylaws, which I have read again, allow a process for a town administrator. But it doesn't allow us anything, it's to say anything about an interim town administrator to hire and how to do this. There was people that were, let's get a committee here, get them in here. Mr. Milanowski wanted to leave at a certain time frame, so we're under the gun for a time frame to leave. So the committee that was to negotiate his contract with Mr. LaFawn is that we had to kind of branch it. If it was too short, then we're not going to turn around and be able to really get a good committee together and get a search going. If it was too long, all right, because other people wanted a 2-year contract or whatnot, and that would kind of sway our bylaws, basically flip our nose on it. And that's what we're getting to now, too, is that people are saying we're not following the bylaws if we don't make a decision tonight. If we make a decision tonight to not pick a town administrator and we go back, we're violating our bylaws. Okay, because our bylaws are clear. It says that All right, we're supposed to get a committee together, the committee's supposed to do their job, they're supposed to give us people to pick from, and we're supposed to pick from that committee. But our bylaw doesn't say anything if you don't like either person that they've submitted, which really comes to the fact that there's some questions, and there's no good time ever to get someone in this position, all right? There's never going to be an optimal time. This is the perfect time to get a new town administrator. It's not going to happen. There's always going to be an issue or something going on here and here and here. And we have two people that this committee got together and said, hey, these are the two people that we're going to push through. There was three, but these are the two. These are what we have to choose from, this one or this one. All right? I do agree we have to make a decision tonight. I think the decision is between Mr. Kelly and Mr. LaFond, okay? Period, cut and dry, because that's what our bylaws say, and that's what we're supposed to do. There's no good time, all right? Whether it's now or in 18 months from now to extend this out, is that going to be the next time to say, oh, well, you know what, it's really not a good time because we have this other stuff going on now, or this other stuff going on coming up, all right? It's a project, yes. Projects come and go. We have some very good staff members here in our town who, believe it or not, when Mr. Milanowski come, he didn't know anything about this town. And he had to learn everything. That's what your job is. If you're going for a position, and you've been interviewed by a screening committee, and you've come before the Board of Selectmen, interviewed with them, then you have the qualifications to do the job. So that's where I'm at right now, okay? So is it ever gonna be a good time, all right, and delaying it, well, it could delay it out to another select board. I may not get elected next year, all right? So there's one good thing, all right? But you know what? I really want this position next year, all right? I'm running next year. I want to be here. I want to represent the people, and that's what I'm here for, to represent the people of this town, all right? And we may differ on this, Mark, and there's not a lot that we don't differ on things, but I do differ on this. So I respect your opinion, I do, but I just can't.
Bob, I understand, and then listen, we're not supposed to be a unanimous board all the time. We're all adults, and we all disagree. So, you know, we have mutual respect, and that's the way it is. But if I could just speak to what you had to say about the timing, I agree that there's no good time, but I think there could be a bad time. And I think this is a bad time. I agree. And I have nothing negative to say about Mr. Kelly. I think he's a good applicant, and he had a good interview. But I do think that we have some unique challenges going on in this town right now that it's a bad time for somebody to get up to speed on that. I think that North Carver project, that's a very large project. There aren't too many towns our size with our type of rural character that have that type of project going on. And Mr. LaFond has been intimately connected with that project. He knows what's going on. He doesn't have to be educated on it. He knows the rural character of town. He's been around long enough that he knows what the people of Carver want there. And I think asking Mr. Kelly or anyone to come in and just expect them to hit the ground running on that type of thing is a lot to ask, and I think it'd be very difficult. And that project's not going to stop just because we haven't made a decision on a town administrator. We have other things going on. We all know about the North Carver water. Luckily, that's coming to a close, but it's out there. There's a number of other things going on. We're a unique town with some unique challenges, and we have someone here. I don't think there is a perfect town administrator out there, but we have someone here who I think understands what Carver wants, and he understands the challenges that we have right now. And again, I've said this several times, I shouldn't keep saying it again, but I think it would be a mistake for us to walk away from someone who clearly wants to be here, who understands what Carver wants, and I think has shown a willingness to work with the board, to change a little bit, to adapt to what this board's expectations are, and I really think, if we could sit down and develop some type of evaluation, some clear expectations, that would go a long way to satisfying the needs of this board. And, if the 18 months is a little bit too long, we could put together some type of negotiating committee to try to come up with a contract. But I think 6 months is too short. I think we need to, and I don't think it's helpful to just ask Mr. LaFawn to stay around for a few more months as an interim just while we go through this process again. I think we need to do one or do the other. And I've spent a lot of time trying to think this through, and I've tried to find a compromise that I think would satisfy the board. And I really think if you think about 18 months, that's a very short town administrator contract. There aren't too many contracts that short out there. So that's all I have to say on the item. Does anyone else? Mr. Hoffman.
So the reason I'd asked the December 31st deadline, so obviously that's start of budget season, so.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hoffman, I can't hear you.
I'm having trouble.
So the reason I had asked the December 31st deadline, why that was agreed upon for the interim town administrator contract, because that is hamstringing us a little bit. And again, 2 new members here that we, kind of, I know it's happened, it's in the past and whatever, but that's why I agree that a 1 year isn't, we're going to be in the same predicament in a year. But I did have a question. Bob had mentioned the search committee list that we have to choose from what the search committee gave us. I believe, Mr. Townsend, had you checked with town council on that, or was that
I did.
true?
I believe I shared a town council's opinion, it was a while ago now, with the board, because I knew that came up at a past meeting. And town council's opinion was that although we do have to choose a town administrator from a list provided by a search committee, if we weren't happy with the list, we could ask for another list.
So we're not breaking any bylaw if we decided not to?
Not in town council's opinion, no.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, I thought that's what we had been told earlier, I just wanted to make sure that we knew that.
Mr. Belvin.
Mr. Chairman, about that, like I said, I read our bylaws, and I think the word is shall. That's the word. You shall do this. That's a strong word. That's a directory word that says you shall do this. It's not you shall do this, but maybe not. It says you shall do this. So we need to look at these bylaws because that's a directory word. I disagree with town council's opinion. They're the lawyers, but you know what? Everyone I talk to and the information that I look up is shall means direction. So we shall do this. And we did everything in the bylaws. We got a committee together, all right? And the committee did their job and gave us people. I think we should have got 5, is what it is. We only got 3. 1 drops out, we're only got 2. So that's our choice. We have 2 choices right now. And, I mean, I agree, we need to make a choice tonight out of those 2 people.
All right. Anyone else? All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Can you repeat the motion again, please?
Sure.
Sorry?
Yep. My motion was to offer Mr. LaFawn an 18-month contract, which would bring us to the end of the 2022 fiscal year. At the same time, and I mean at the same time, I think when the 2 members of the board, if this passes, the 2 members of the board that negotiate the contract should also develop an evaluation of the town administrator, some clear goals that the board expects, and we should include those. So, he clearly knows what we expect. So I'll read my motion. My motion would be to offer the town administrator an 18-month contract and at the same time establish some clear goals and objectives for the town administrator with evaluations, written evaluations, to be done at the end of 6 months and at the end of 12 months.
So I just have a question on that.
Sure.
So 6 months and 12 months, if after 12 months that the review isn't favorable, if we decide to, like you had said before, just, say we're going to move on to something, I just want to make sure that we put ourselves in a tight situation this year with the search committee. I think we all agree. They did a great job for the short time frame that we gave them. So if, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, if it did happen in the future, we have to make sure we give a search committee plenty of time.
I agree, and I think one of the things that could be included in the contract is a notification to Mr. LaFont at the end of that 12 months, at the end of that 12-month evaluation. Either we'd like to retain you, and let's enter into contract negotiations, or thank you, but I think the board would like to move in another direction, and we give him notice, and at the same time, we put the search committee together to hire another full-time town administrator. And that gives that search committee a full 6 months to go out and do their job. And that could, I would have no problem with a 12-month notification at the end of that 12-month that the board takes and either says, yes, Mr. LaFont, we'd like to keep you here, let's work on a contract, or no, we don't, and thank you, and we're going to move on. And that could certainly be included in any contract. Mr. Belvin.
So we're basically, if we do this, is he considered the town administrator? Is he still the interim town administrator?
No. My motion was to hire him as the town administrator, not an interim town administrator. Ms. Bogart.
Doing the 12-month evaluation, if you decide at any time with any contract, after 12 months of an 18-month contract, you decide we're going to go a different way, and you have 6 months to do it, isn't that in essence what we did this year? If we didn't decide to start the process till June or July, we gave ourselves 6 months. So if we decided, a year into an 18-month contract, how would it be different?
Well,
I'm sorry.
If I could just, the way it would be different, and this was, again, I thought a long time about this, a long time. The way it would be different is Mr. LaFont would not be the interim town administrator. He'd be the town administrator. The way we did it this time was he was the interim, he applied for the permanent position, and I think that, as Mr. Walsh, I think, indicated when we talked about the town search committee, the screening committee and how they worked, he thought that may have resulted in us getting less applicants for the permanent position, because we had someone here who was applying for the permanent position. In this case, he'd be the town administrator. He wouldn't be the interim town administrator. And at the end of 12 months, if we chose not to retain him, we'd be letting him know. We'd be saying, Mr. LaFont, thank you for your service to the town, but we no longer choose, we'd like to go in a different direction. So there wouldn't be an incumbent town administrator. It would be an open position, and I think, judging by what Mr. Walsh said, that would result in a lot more applicants coming in to the position. So that's why I structured it that way, and not as an interim, for that particular reason.
Yeah, and if I could just add
Ms. Jones.
Mark's point is, I think, very important. The other point, I believe, is if the 18 months would be the end of the fiscal year, so if we didn't hire him that last 6 month period and we let him know, we would actually be giving ourselves more time than we did this time. So, and it's a kind of a different time of year. Anyway, minor point.
We'd also be bringing in a new town administrator after town meeting, after the budgets are done, after town meeting. I think Mr. Belvin is correct. There is no good time to do this, but some times are better than others. And I think the best time for change in a town in that type of position would be at the start of a fiscal year, after you get through town meeting, after you get through all of that. The budgets are all done, it's just an easier time, I think. I think it's an easier transition time for someone to come into town. Mr. Belbin's right, we have no idea what's going to be going on in town 12 months or 18 months from now. We could have new challenges that we haven't even thought of. But I think it's a cleaner time to bring somebody in. If for no other reason that you have all your budgets done, you've gotten through town meeting, and a lot of those hurdles are over. And again, if the board chose to vote for this motion, I think the next thing we would have to do is to put together a couple of members of the board, as we did before, to negotiate a contract with Mr. LaFawn. So this wouldn't be the end. They would sit down and negotiate a contract and bring it back to this board for approval. This would just allow us to go into those contract negotiations. So again, I worked very, very hard on this proposal, trying to come up with some compromise that would satisfy everybody. And I know it's almost impossible to satisfy everybody, but I think this allows the town for some continuity, and at the same time allows us to set some clear goals and expectations for Mr. LaFawn that I think perhaps we haven't communicated to him quite as clearly as we should have. So those are my thoughts. Are there any?
I just have a
Mr.
question. So you had said before that if in 12 months that we don't feel as though we want to continue him, we would tell him, and we'd start a search committee. And you feel as though that we would get more qualified candidates if the current town administrator was not going to be renewed?
I do, and it's not just me, it was Mr. Walsh as well, because you remember when he came to our meeting, he stated he thought one of the reasons they didn't get as many applicants as they thought they may was because we had an interim town administrator who was also applying for the current position. So in essence, he was an incumbent. If, under this proposal, at the end of 12 months, if we chose to not continue with Mr. LaFawn, we tell him. We tell him, Mr. LaFawn, thank you for your service to the town, but we want to go in another direction. So he wouldn't be applying for the permanent position again, because we would have already let him know that we want to go in a different direction. So that would mean the position was open. There really is no incumbent coming back to apply for that position.
Okay.
Am I making myself clear?
Yeah,
or-
no, the reason I ask is because I agree 100%, and I've said that previously, that I thought that that's the reason we didn't get a lot of more qualified applicants.
And that's why that's one of the reasons I structured this the way I did. So, and I think both of those evaluations are important, not only 12 months, but also 6 months, because we're not letting much time pass before we sit down with Mr. LaFawn and say, hey, we think you're doing pretty good over here, but we're not very happy with what you're doing over here. And I think perhaps we should have done that sooner last time, but we didn't, and that's just the way it is. But I think we can learn from that and try to move forward. So that's why I structured this the way I.
Okay, no, that's the reason I just asked the question, because I still stand by what I said at the last meeting, that on my feelings about this situation. That.
All right. Anyone else? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. So the motion fails. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint James Kelly as our new town administrator.
All right. We have a motion to appoint Mr. Kelly. Is there a second? That motion fails.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Rick LaFond, our town administrator, for a period of 6 months, from January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022.
Just to be clear, town administrator and not interim town administrator,
Correct.
right? We have a motion to appoint Mr. LaFond, the interim, the town administrator, for a period of 6 months. Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion. Ms. Ewens?
Well, I think 18 months is really better because 6 months is just not very much. But Mrs. Bogart, you said you were willing to go with 6 months. Is that, have you changed your mind? Or?
Not if the search continues today. I'm comfortable trying 6 more months, but not waiting another day to continue looking. Because as Mr. Walsh said, and Jim just asked, and Mark said, someone had said to me, if the job gets reposted, maybe that will tell people the position is still open. Saying too much. I could be open to 6 months, but only if a continued search is attached to that.
Ms. Hewens, if you'd permit me.
Yes.
Ms. Bogart, let me just ask. Is there some period of time longer than 6 months but less than 18 months that you would consider appointing Mr. LaFond as the town administrator with some type of valuation in there to give the board a chance to let him know how he's doing? I guess my thought is that I don't know if it helps us to just continue to search while we're doing this. I think the time period is bad, but would you consider appointing him for a year? I guess I'm just trying to find if there's some period of time that you would feel comfortable with an appointment, or if you just are totally uncomfortable with appointing him at all.
I think it's been said, having someone transition at the end of December is a bad idea. So
Yeah.
a year contract at this point to anyone, I thought, doesn't make sense. So I go back to what I said at the last meeting. I didn't say no, I didn't say yes, I said not yet. I was not convinced that Mr. Kelly would have been the right person. I'm not confident that Rick could be the person long-term. But you know, I went in your office and I told you this on last Friday. I said, I will leave the door open, but I want someone who I'm totally confident in. So I am open to, 6 more months, but I want to be not fielding other offers, but I want to see if in the meantime someone may come along who I am confident giving that long-term contract to. Maybe not perfect. Everybody says there's not a perfect one. There's not a perfect time, not a perfect person.
So I think the issue there, and I understand your thought process and your reasoning, but I think there's a couple of issues. I think the first issue is we did see and we did hear from Mr. Walsh, and I agree, that we may have gotten less applicants for the position than we thought we might, because we had an interim town administrator who was applying for the permanent position. And I think that would just put us right back where we are right now, just 6 months farther down the line. So that's the first thing. The other thing we have to consider is that where we are right now, timing-wise, we are, a month away from Thanksgiving. Christmas comes after that. This is a bad time to go out there and try to advertise for these positions, because quite frankly, I think the first thing we'd have to do is reach out to the existing search committee, because we don't know how many of those folks are going to want to continue. They may or they may not, but we have to find out. It's likely that we may have to interview other people to replace the folks who don't want to continue. Then you're going to get in, by the time you get through with that, you're into the holidays. So it's going to be difficult to even begin the search, I think, until probably close to the first of the year. So those are just my thoughts. So, anyone else? Mr. Belvin?
So, Mr. Chair, you keep on bringing the 44 project up, all right? The only real project right now physically going on is the 44 new construction way for that roadway. The actual building of the urban renewal plan in the back property there, that's not going to start within a year or 2 years, okay? To be totally honest, the process for them to turn around and go through the permitting, just the permitting alone of this type of a project, all right, takes months and months and months to go through, all right? And what ends up happening here is that that's probably 3 years out, maybe even more, depending on what the economy looks like in another year, 2 years, all right? So that project is there, okay? It's taken a long time just to get there to where it is now, all right? The road construction project, that's an easy project. It's a short-term project that's going through. Our water system project, short-term projects, okay? Anybody can come in here who has been a town administrator, all right, who served in that capacity, all right? Coming into our town, it's not changing it. It's coming in and saying, okay, fine, how do you do things? You talk to your management staff, how do you do things, okay? So anybody can come in here as a town administrator with the education, training, and knowledge, all right, and do this job. Anybody can do that, all right? So to turn around and say, just because he's been here and he knows the systems in place, yeah, that's a plus, all right? But there are other factors, all right? So that's just my feeling, okay? So I just want to make it clear that anybody who's applying for this position, all right, who went through the screening process, all right, then that's what we have to pick from, so.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you want.
You and I are aware of this, but I don't know if the rest of the board is. So at the moment, there's a lot going on with the quote-unquote urban renewal project. Yes, to get to the permitting phase, get through that is going to take a long time. But what you don't understand is that right now, Rick is actually the chief negotiator for all the stuff that leads up to that permitting project. And it's an enormous task. And I know I'm not up for it, but sitting at some of those meetings, I'm just amazed, because there's a whole bunch of things in order to even get to the permitting that need to be worked out with these people. He's been doing it for quite a while now, and there's some movement, but you know, this kind of stuff is slow. So I don't think any of us are delusional that the permitting may not happen for a couple, 3 years, but it's this important upfront stuff that's, it's just a lot of bad things that could happen, Bob. I mean, that's the way it is on this particular project. And right now, we have someone who's extremely competent. And to your point, Mrs. Bogart, I don't know what you would feel comfortable with, but Rick was in this town for 17 years and did a pretty darn good job, in my opinion. It's the town you moved to because you liked the rural character, and there was a lot of work that went into that. Believe me, I know, because I was an employee, and I saw what he did. So.
And if I could just add to that, I think something that struck me here is that every single one of our public safety chiefs has endorsed Mr. LaFond. And I think that speaks a lot, because they interact with him constantly, and there's so many challenges in those departments. And I think there's something else that, like, again, we may probably move past this and move on to some other arguments, but something that gets overlooked, I think, a lot in town, probably because it happened so easily, was that this town and our town hall stayed open almost the entire time we went through COVID-19, and it's still going on, but there were other town halls. Plymouth Town Hall was closed for a year. There were many other town halls that were closed, Carver Town Hall, except for a couple of weeks, was open. People were able to come in and see the town clerk. They were able to get building permits. They were able to do what they needed to do. And that wasn't all Mr. LaFawn. That was department heads and employees and everybody working together. But Mr. LaFawn's the town administrator, and if you're going to take the blame when something goes wrong, then you have to get the credit when something goes right. And that went right. And I think he deserves some credit for that. And that's overlooked a lot. But I think it's overlooked because it happened so easily. And I don't think it should be overlooked. I think that was an important thing that benefited everyone in town. And a lot of that credit goes to Mr. LaFawn. So anyway, we have a motion and a second to hire Mr. LaFawn as the town administrator for 6 months. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
There's no continuing the search attached to that.
Ms. Hewens, is there?
That wasn't my motion, but I don't think it's appropriate, but.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms.
I just
Mr.
want
Bill.
to, because the timing, okay, I had to go back through my emails. On February 2nd, I sent to Sarah Ewens a request to have discussion and vote to create a search committee and funding mechanism to start in April. That was back in February that I requested that. So I just want people to understand that. It was requested long before we actually started, and it was not even brought to a vote.
I understand, and listen, looking back, there's lots of different things we could have done, but we're here now, and when we have to move this process along. So we have a motion and a second to hire Mr. LaFawn as the town administrator for 6 months. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
No. Okay, the motion fails. All right. So we've had motions, various motions on.
Can I,
Ms. Bell, Ms.
this
Bogart.
may be inappropriate, so please tell me if it is. Because I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you right now. Then someone will tell me if I can. Are you open to staying 6 months knowing that there's still an active open search that you've not been eliminated from, but that is still happening while you're working? Because I think that's what we're dancing around. That's where I'm at. I mean,
Well, I want to be careful with this because, as you know, there are other issues at play here. I'm not sure I'm going to answer you directly, but I would say to the larger issue, this is an organization, and organizations need stability. What's been going on here has caused a tremendous amount of instability in our town hall, our library, our public safety agencies, some of our collective bargaining units. This is not good. This is not good for the town. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't be open to something, but I will say that something that's so short does not provide the stability and the confidence that the employees and department heads, and again, our collective bargaining units, there needs to be stability in an organization. And the instability right now is causing some serious issues that you may not see, but they're there. And this isn't helping the town. So, like I say, I'm not saying I would rule anything out. You know, there are other issues involved here, as you well know. But I think I think you want to think to the larger issue here is that this organization is suffering from the lack of stability. And I would encourage you to go to any of your department heads and ask that question. Because this isn't just about me, it's about the town as an organization, and this is very difficult for everybody. And it's difficult for me to see how department heads are suffering and the departments are suffering from the instability. I mean, we're doing everything we can, and I give a lot of credit to our department heads. But when there's so much unknown at the top of the chart here, it creates a problem, and I don't know that everybody recognizes that. So The answer, I know that's a long way of saying, not necessarily closed to anything, but the place needs, in my opinion, the place needs stability, and it needs it soon, not in 6 months or a year or whatever the case is. And I think it gets lost. This is an organization. It's not, I think I've said enough. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Are there any motions?
So I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Levine as town administrator for a period of 12 months.
I'll second it. I don't know if we need much discussion. We've had quite a bit. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Well, I guess, and people tell me I open my mouth too much, it just seems kind of silly based on everything you said about one-year contracts being silly, so.
I guess the answer is I think the one-year contract is not good timing, but I agree with some of what Mr. LaFawn said. I think we have a lot of uncertainty at Carver Town Hall, and we need to try to bring some certainty to this situation. So while I don't think the year is optimum, I think it's better than nothing. So I guess, and perhaps Ms. Hewins would accept a friendly motion. Let me ask you this, Ms. Bogart. I understand it's not a big change, but would you be willing to accept, instead of an 18-month contract, a 16-month contract with the same type of evaluations I spoke of earlier? And I'll tell you where I get the 16 months from. Is while it doesn't get us to the end of the fiscal year, it gets us to the end of April, which gets us through budget process, gets us through the end of town meeting. So although it's only a couple of months, it still accomplishes some of what I was trying to accomplish with the 18 months. And I guess as far as the evaluations, we could move that back to still allow 6 months. If it was a 16-month contract, we could have an evaluation after 10 months where we give Mr. LaFawn notice whether we want to retain his services or not. I know it's not a big change, but it's a change. And if Ms. Hewins would be willing to accept that friendly motion, maybe.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a way of compromise where we could get some stability in Carver Town Hall and still, in a relatively short position, if you weren't satisfied with Mr. LaFawn's job performance, it would give you a chance to vote to go look for a new town administrator. And maybe that's a compromise.
We're all in hot seats right here, and I feel like mine's on fire, because we are a 5-member board, and I get the dynamics, and again, this is on fire. It's so hard. I get what you're saying, I get what you're saying, I get what you're saying, I'm not in everybody's heads, but I listen. I get what Rick's saying. I'm sitting here because I want what's best for the town. That's why we're all here. No one's up here saying we want the town in shambles. So I get it, and there's no easy, and it's hard. And I have thought so hard for months and months. And I don't want people to think that I've been closed-minded to it, because it's the complete opposite. But I really tried hard for the last meeting, and I'm really kind of set in continuing to see if there's someone I can be totally confident in. Now, I mean, I'm kind of just talking in circles. It's everything I've said, guys, so.
I don't disagree. I think we are talking a little bit in circles. Mr. Belvin.
I'm offended.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know, not by you,
Oh.
not by you, okay? Instability within our town hall, okay? There's a lot of people can turn around and take some credit upon that. To put it on us, that it's our fault, no way. No way. I'm offended that that was put in there. So I'm done.
Okay, all right.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, I've been told similar things by many employees. So, I mean, that's not Mr. LaFond insulting us. That's just what people are saying.
And I can't say what I want to say.
Okay.
Okay, are we able to make motions right now? Or is there like one in process?
Well, we have a motion and a second. Would you
Okay.
like to offer a friendly, perhaps, amendment to Ms. Hewen's motion?
Nah, I was like wording one myself.
No, I
so-
think your motion was on the floor.
Well, so we had a motion and a second for a 16-month contract.
Correct.
That's what we had.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to offer Mr. LaFond a 16-month contract with, I think, a decision, an evaluation and a decision after 10 months.
Correct.
So, any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, my
Ms.
motion
Bogart.
turn. We're having fun with motions tonight. Okay, I will make a motion to reopen the town administrator search to make a charge, guidelines, and criteria for either a new screening committee or extending the current screening committee, which we need to talk about. The end. I basically took from the agenda. My motion is to reopen the search.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second the discussion.
Okay. All right, discussion. Ms. Bogart? Is it any-
It's just what I think needs to be done.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just, I'd like to, at the last meeting, I had made a motion to choose neither candidate and then reopen the search. So we could just send the message out that, to the search committee and to any potential candidates. So I don't know if you'd be willing to.
Mr. Hoffman, I can't hear you.
I can't hear you as well, yeah.
What I said was at the last meeting, I had made a motion to choose neither candidate and reopen the search. So I was just asking Mrs. Bogarts, if she would take a friendly amendment to that, or if she just wanted to stay with what she said.
I think based on everything I said tonight, I'll stay with this, but I've made it very clear, like, not convinced. So I would like us to continue and set parameters. Do we want the current screening committee? Do we want to open it up? I would like it to continue, but not having said yes or no to anyone, especially since you said Mr. Kelly may still be interested. Who knows? But as of today, I'm not convinced. So I would say I won't change it because I don't want to say no or yes to anyone. I just am not confident today.
So, if I could, I think if the board wants to reopen the search committee, there's a couple of steps I think we should consider taking. The first would be to probably authorize Ms. Weston to contact the existing members of the search committee and to see if they're interested in continuing to serve on the search committee, because that will help guide us as to whether we need to seek additional people, or perhaps if one drops off or two, we could continue with a 5-member search committee instead of a 7-member search committee. I think, would the board be willing to authorize that?
I do have concerns with a couple of the members who were on the screening committee if the screening committee were to continue
Okay, so,
because of recent discussions.
so is your motion to just advertise for a new search committee?
I don't know how to word that. I don't know. I'll take input because I don't,
Yeah. Mr.
I
Chair,
don't know.
if I may say, I'm not quite sure how to say this, but I think that we should maybe table this whole discussion tonight for reasons that I can't discuss.
Okay.
She's got a motion and a second.
She does have a motion and a
So,
second.
this discussion, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Mr. Belvin.
Again, go back to my bylaws, and like I said, I had a couple of people that turn around, and here you go, you got two, pick from one. And I've been talked to about a lot of different people about why I should pick one and not the other, and as it sees right now, we have a stalemate. Our bylaw does not say anything about a stalemate of picking a town administrator. It doesn't say anything. So do we now turn around and say, okay, fine, we look for a screening committee that looks for another town administrator? I'm sorry, we had two options. Those two options, both of them failed. So basically, we have no other choice. No other choice than to start a new screening committee. And I think that's what we have to do, is have a new screening committee, and if anybody wants to apply from the other screening committee, please do, in my opinion, and work along those lines and say, okay, fine, now we are under the gun even more of what we're going to do to get this process going now to the end of the year. Like I said, I asked for this a long time ago, and it didn't get any action. Okay, so don't come crying to me, all right, and say we didn't have enough time. I tried.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to reopen the town administrator search to make a charge, guideline, and criteria for a new screening committee. Because per the bylaw too, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a town administrator from a list prepared by a screening committee. I get the shall interpretation, but it says from a list, not from the first list. And
that is, if I may
prepared by-
point out, I don't mean to interrupt, but that is
Yeah.
town council's opinion as well.
Prepared by a screening committee. Doesn't necessarily say the first. No one wants to drag this out, okay? That's just where I'm at now. So that's my motion, so.
Okay. So, just a couple of thoughts during discussion. So, the first thing is that I think we're heading into a difficult time for any screening committee to do its work, just because we have holidays coming, and it's going to be, the process is going to be a little longer this time, I think. So I think one of the things the board is going to have to consider, if it's not Mr. LaFond, is some type of interim town administrator, whether we reach out to the Collins Center or somewhere else, but I think we're going to have somebody in that office. So perhaps, you know, you have a motion, Ms. Hewens has some thoughts on this as well. Perhaps to give everyone a little time to think this through, would you consider authorizing Ms. Weston to just reach out to the members of the current screening committee, just to see if they're interested in continuing if we do have a new search committee, not to appoint them or not appoint them or anything, just to see what their interest level is, because they are experienced now. They've gone through this before, and they know what it takes. They know how much time it takes, and that is probably an advantage.
If it's not automatic appointments, absolutely.
No, just all we are is gauging their interest.
Yeah.
And then she could come back at the next meeting, let us know, yeah, we have 5 members that are interested, 3, 2, whatever it is, and then we can make some decisions as to whether how we want to go forward with that screening committee.
Yeah.
Would that be willing? So that's not really taking action on your motion. That's simply, I guess that's perhaps a friendly amendment to your motion, to just authorize Ms. Weston to gauge the interest of the current screening committee in continuing to aid us in trying to...
Oh, so like if they said they didn't want to do it, it would come back to us and say, wow, we'd have to start all over
Well,
again? Because that just kind of delays the process even more.
But I think the process is going to be delayed anyway now, because I don't think, we're not going to be able to charge the current screening committee, I don't think, with coming back with a town administrator by, I don't pick a date off the top of my head, March 1st. Or it's just, you've got the holidays in there and so many things going on. I honestly believe that if we are going to go forward with a new screening committee and a new search, then you're going to probably have to take some time and bring in an interim town administrator for whatever time, a month, 3 months, whatever the time period is. But I don't think, just my opinion, I don't think and we could discuss this further when we get to a charge, but I don't think any screening committee is going to be prepared to offer us a list by, again, I'm just picking a date off the top of my head, March 1st. I think it's too quick, and it's a bad time because you have the holidays in there. So I think if we have to go back and search again, we're probably looking at having to bring in some type of temporary, interim town administrator and just following, giving the search committee more time to do this whole process. I think anything short would be rushing. I think what we don't want to do is rush this process again
Right.
and be back. Now it's March 15th or April 1st, and here we are back here again. We don't
Right.
want that. So I guess if you, and I think Mr. Hoffman seconded it, would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment to your motion just to authorize Ms. Weston to reach out to the current screening committee and see if they're interested in continuing to serve before we authorize some type of other?
But what would happen if they came back and said no?
Well, depending on, again.
Like, then we would have to say, okay, well, we're going to start.
Well,
Just
right
'cause-
now, I think no matter what they say, we're probably going to have to make some decisions, but at least we'd know. We'd know whether we have to go look for 2 people or 7 people or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't even know. So, and again, we have people that have gone through the process, and they know what it takes. So to bring in all new folks when we have people that know what it takes, I'm not sure. Maybe we're better off going with the people that have the experience. So I guess that's just my thought. And other members of the board may have different opinions, but that's my thought. Are there any?
No, Mrs. Bogart, are you willing to make that your motion?
I'm trying to not prolong the process because that's what we keep saying. So the motion would be to reopen the search, to make a charge, guidelines, and criteria for a screening committee.
I guess what
With-
Mr. Townsend is saying, though, is
Yeah.
we have a screening committee.
Right, so for a screening committee, because I have concerns about, there are 2 members that are currently on the screening committee that would have concerns continuing on because of things that have been,
Okay, but
Discuss
we
that.
don't know if any of them want to continue. I mean, the whole idea here is to find out who's willing.
Right. So it's
Then we
not
come
auto
back
appoint-
and make a decision about the makeup of a screening committee. Because you can't make a decision if you don't know who's willing to stay on or not.
okay, so to make a charge, guidelines, and criteria for a screening committee. We won't say new, we won't say current, for a screening committee. And in the meantime, between now and the next meeting, Ms. Weston can reach out and come back at the next meeting and say, A, B, C, D, and E would like to continue, F and G may not.
Well, yeah, I understand. I think as far as the charge and guidelines, I mean, that's something, we don't need a motion to do that because we're going to have to do that.
Okay.
The motion would be to come up with what the charge and guidelines are. Do you know what I mean? We're going to
Okay.
have to give the screening committee a charge and a guidelines. I guess what I'm trying to establish is the screening committee
Okay.
first. If we need, before we give them a charge and guidelines and timelines and the whole thing, I guess the first thing I'd like to establish is, do we have a screening committee?
Okay.
Because that's the first thing we have to determine before we do anything else.
So I'll try to simplify it. So I modify my motion I make a motion to reopen the town administrator search and authorize Elaine Weston to contact the people of the most recent screening committee to see if they would want, this is not shorter, if they would want to continue serving on a screening committee.
Right. Mr. Hoffman, would you be willing to second that motion?
Sure.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just have a quick question. So in fairness to Mr. LaFawn and Mr. Kelly, do we have to vote to appoint neither before we start a search committee?
I think we've made it pretty clear that the board's not
and
interested
again,
in retaining either service right now.
I just, and again, we've kind of all danced around the issue. I just want to know, do we have to come out as a board? And again, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm not sure of the technicalities.
Yeah,
If we have to come out as a board and say that.
I think at this time, perhaps,
I don't think we need to, Mr. Chair.
I think we might be better off operating on Ms. Bogart's motion and gauging that at a future meeting. I don't think we need to have a motion like that right now, but that's just my thoughts.
Well, and as you say, it's been pretty clear, and it's on YouTube, so, you know, I think it's pretty much out there.
Why don't we vote on Ms. Bogart's motion, and if you want to make a subsequent motion, we'll vote on that as well, okay? So we have a motion. I'm sorry, Elaine, could you read back that motion one more time so we know what everyone's...
Most current.
Amended her motion to reappoint the town administrator, to reopen the town administrator search, and for Weston to contact the current screening committee members to gain their interest.
Yeah, right?
The town, okay. And Mr. Hoffman, you seconded that motion, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Opposed?
Okay, 3-2, that passes. Okay. Mr. Hoffman, do you wish to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we choose neither candidate.
I'll second.
Well, I think we've already chosen neither candidate.
This discussion?
Yeah, sure.
That's actually a really good idea. Jim, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't even think of it myself. It basically makes it finalized to say, okay, fine, we didn't do. I'd be happy to contact Mr. Kelly tomorrow and let him know of our decision not to choose him and not to choose Mr. LaFont.
I think we probably should authorize Ms. Weston to make that contact.
No one else has contacted him about this from this board, and I think that we are
haven't
the...
I don't think
we haven't
this
had a
board, I
discussion.
don't think it's appropriate for this board to contact him. That's just my
Well,
opinion.
And there was nothing to contact him about. We hadn't made a decision.
Well, he
So-
should at least have known what was going on during our meetings, and I
I'm
think
sure he
reaching
does.
out by a member of the select board is better than, because we're the ones that are making the decision. So,
You're in,
I,
it's up to the board.
yeah.
They want me or Ms. Weston to do it.
Mr. Hoffman, are you amending your motion to include that?
No.
No, okay. So we have a motion and a second to hire neither candidate. Any further discussion?
I'm just not there yet.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. So, Sarah, will you know?
I'm a no,
sorry.
yes.
Okay, so 2-3, that motion fails. Okay. Any further motions on this agenda item?
So what have we accomplished tonight?
What we've accomplished is that we're going to ask Ms. Weston
Let's
to
go to town.
to reach out to the existing search committee and see who, if any, is interested in continuing to serve on a screening committee going forward. That's what we've done. And at the next meeting, once we find out who's interested in serving, I think we're going to have to probably talk about some guidelines for a time and probably discuss whether we authorize Ms. Weston to contact the Collins Center or some other type of search agency about bringing in an interim town administrator. I think we're going to need somebody. We're not going to have, no matter what we do, we're not going to have somebody else in that office by December 31st.
Can I just interject?
Ms. Bogart.
I think something else we accomplished tonight, the outcome was not what we wanted. We wanted we want an answer. We want stability. We don't want to know what's going on. But I think what we accomplished tonight is that we showed everybody that we care. So no matter what, if anyone wants to say there's instability and unknowns and stuff, the fact that we spent this much time discussing it genuinely, wholeheartedly, I know I could literally feel these guys' hearts in the discussion over here, you know? to me, that's what we accomplished. We accomplished caring. So,
And I would just say to the board that, again, I think it's important that we move this along. And I think it's too soon tonight, but we have pretty much made some decisions here. And I think at our next meeting, we're going to have, please go home and think about this for the next couple of weeks, because I think we're going to need some serious thought about making some accommodations for an interim town administrator, because we're not going to have somebody in that office by December 31st. And the office can't be vacant. There's too many things going on. And although I have tremendous confidence in Ms. Weston's abilities, she has a full-time job. And to ask her to do her full-time job and the town administrator's full-time job is, I think, too much for anyone. So we're going to need to be prepared to make some decisions on that at the next meeting. We can't afford to let that sit. So, anything else on this agenda item before we move forward?
And I guess the reason I asked what we accomplished was I had hoped we'd either choose Mr. LaFawn, Mr. Kelly, or neither, just to send a message to everybody that there was 3 options. And if I'm reading it right, we didn't make any options. We just said, let's start a search or try to reevaluate the search committee.
Well, I don't know. To me, I think we chose neither. I mean, there was a
But we didn't come out and
vote.
say that. That's why I made that motion. And I'm not, I just want to have it perfectly clear to both people. I mean, they've applied and we're kind of hanging in the wind right now, and I just thought it would be better for the board to come out with a statement, yes or no.
I understand.
But
I
again,
don't
that's
know.
just my opinion. I just wanted to
No,
pass that
I
on.
understand. I guess, to me, we took multiple votes on Mr. LaFond, all which failed. We took a vote on Mr. Kelly, which failed. So I'm not seeing much enthusiasm from any members of the board to, right now, to continue with either candidate. So,
Okay.
just my thoughts on the issue. All right. Next item up on the agenda this evening.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry,
could we
Ms.
have a
Ewens.
2-minute break?
Sure.
Thank you.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break? All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. One thing I just wanted to bring up to the board, just on the last agenda item before we move on. Thinking about the timing right now, we're close to the end of October. Since it does appear that we're probably going to need an interim town administrator, perhaps we should authorize Ms. Weston to reach out to the various consultants that handle these things and authorize her to make inquiries as to who's available, because we're going to need somebody as of December 31st, and we're going to run into the holidays soon, and that's probably going to impact the timing. So I wanted to make the board aware of that and see what the board's thoughts are, and if anyone feels comfortable making a motion. Thoughts? Anyone? Would the board prefer to take no action on that tonight?
I think we should, I agree. I think that, with the holidays and everything coming up, we probably should do something. So I guess I would make a motion to have Ms. Weston start to look.
Mr. Hoffman, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I think your microphone may not be working as well as it.
How's that, better?
Yes,
Much
it's
better,
much
thank you.
better.
Sorry about that. I agree that time, with the holidays coming up, time is getting shorter, that I would like to make a motion that we allow Ms. Weston to look into the available candidates for, whatever the process for an interim town administrator.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
yeah, I'll second.
All right, discussion?
Yeah, what does that mean? If we authorize Elaine to do that, what does that mean? As someone who's gone through the interim process, what does it mean?
Well, and the interim process was a little bit different last time, but basically what it means is there are various firms out there, and I'm not even sure which firms they are, so Elaine, you might be able to offer us some insight, but basically she can inquire as to who is available for town administrators, interim town administrators. Ms. Weston, could you add a little more?
Well, I know there are firms that do the town administrator search. I could contact them to find out if they also do provide insurance services.
I'm sorry, Elaine, I couldn't hear everything you said over here.
So there are firms that do town administrator searches.
Okay.
I could reach out to those firms to find out if they would be able to provide candidates for interim.
I think-
Similar to how you did it last time.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
Are
So-
the firms the same as the type of firms or recruiting companies that one could use for
I
a full-time?
believe
Is it
they
the-
are.
Is it the exact same people?
I don't know if they're the exact same people, but,
Yeah.
The exact same people?
Yep.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
So, I'm sorry, was it 3-2, Mr. Hoffman, so 3-2 in favor. All right, thank you. All right, let's see. Carver, Marion, Wareham Regional Refuse District, Disposal District update.
All
Mr.
right.
Belvin?
I have a prepared statement, reading for the district, just to give you an update of what's going on and what we've done in the past and where we're going to be going in the future. All right. The Waste District has a full complement of officials, 3 from Carver and 3 from Wareham. We have 1 district executive, Jeff Osuch, and we have one accountant, her name's Laurie Bardwell. We meet on the last Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m., and we've been doing it by Zoom. District has had our second audit. It's almost finished. Since the alleged funds that were theft of funds from the district. I'm the chairman at the last election. Since then, we have voted on a new treasurer and secretary. We are in talks with Wareham to extend the use of the property for a transfer station for both Carver and Wareham residents for the next 3.5 years. We have in the bank $979,000, where $95,000 is set aside for our health care for our past employees. We have negotiated a settlement of $270,000. We paid off the retirement from Plymouth County for $330,000 for our past employees. We hope for more funds to be available in the future, but I don't see that happening. The property is our biggest asset at about $500,000. Right now, we're about $1.75 million in the bank. Sounds like a lot of money, really isn't when we start talking about what we have to spend. What we all have to keep in mind is the district is not making any more money to pay our bills. Our district executive, insurance, audits, rent, supplies, etc. The district will need to make decisions to find ways to make money, not on the backs of Carver residents and Wareham residents, for the next 25 to 30 years. We could be out of money in 15 to 20 years and start asking for residents to pick up those costs, taking away tax dollars from the towns. One way that I have introduced is to invest our funds into bonds or other legal securities. The other is to assess towns small amounts of money each year to keep our bank stable. Possibility of leasing our property in the future if the transfer station stops running is a possibility, or again, we can sell it. The district will need to create a new agreement between Wareham and Carver. We will need to account for if the district does not have enough money to pay the bills in the future. The discussions of percentage or equalized valuation will need to be discussed by the board, whether it be 70-30, 65-35, 60-40, or equalized valuation. Also, if money is left over, how do we distribute it is either going to be through equalized valuation or a percentage amount. If the district and the towns agree to put money each year, if any money is left over, it'll be returned to each one of the towns. We have South Carver landfill is a liability for 30 years. We are all liable to that, and if anything happens, we have to pay the bills. We have insurance policies to cover that. My goal is to have all agreements and legal issues finished by April of 2022. At that time, the district will only need to meet quarterly to pay the bills, insurance, executive, bookkeeper, audit, and business expenses. We have to monitor and sell the property at some point. The main goal with the district right now is to protect the money. Anyone that is a member of the district needs to have that as our main goal, protect the money. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.
Questions from the board?
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you so much for doing all of that, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Well done, Bob. It's a lot of hard work. Anything else? All right. Moving on, the town administrator update. Mr. LaFond.
Yes, this morning, and I did send the board emails.
Mr. LaFond, your microphone? That's right.
I sent you, the board members, an email this morning with just a summary of where we stand currently with the CARES Act. I have hard copies. I don't know who had a chance to look at it, but what you see in front of you is a synopsis of all of our submissions and categorized. I'm sorry, before that is the regular sheet that that I've been providing occasionally with the list the dates, the submission amounts, those approved. And down the bottom, I do mention those categories, those items or projects that are still to be submitted. I have hard copies here if people didn't get their email. I'm happy to distribute it now if you'd like, or.
Could you just pass one down to me, Mr. LaFond?
Sure.
I don't-
Rick, when did you send that email?
I sent it at some point this morning, probably, thank you.
So I have one from Thursday. I don't have anything from this
I
morning.
see, I sent it this morning. It was probably around 8:30, 8 or 8:30, Bob, I'm not positive.
All right, that's 3.
In any event, I'm sorry if members didn't have a chance to see that. It's rather, it's summary anyway, it's not something that you would necessarily want to do anything with, but the first page, again, is the spreadsheet that I've been providing occasionally with regard to, again, submissions, approvals, and how much funding we have remaining. And what we intend to submit, probably within the next week or two, is an additional $516,000, which will take us a little bit over our earmarked max. What's attached after that is a kind of a color-coded synopsis of all of our submissions and approvals, so that you can just see by general category what our submissions have been. For instance, HVAC, work-from-home technology, personal protective equipment. So again, I don't need to get into it all, but just for your knowledge, you could look at all the submissions to date and how much we spent on each general category. Again, any questions you might have or any questions in the coming days, feel free to pass them by me, but this is really just for you to have. And again, you might find it helpful. And in addition, I know you were all there for yesterday to get checks from Mr. O'Brien, treasurer of the county, as well as county commissioners.
Mr. LaFond, just to be clear,
Yes.
we didn't all get checks, the town got checks.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for correcting me on that, Mr. Townsend. So, anything else on that at the moment? I know you discussed ARPA a little bit earlier. I think we need to do that again. With regard to the Plymouth Street water line, it's really not the water line itself that, I know it's just kind of a standing item. Another email I forwarded to the board today. The residents up in the Plymouth Street area were informed that the town is assessing the impacts on groundwater and the private wells down gradient of the North Carver landfill. and that sampling crews will be on site Wednesday, 27th, and 28th, Thursday the 28th, to collect samples. So these people up in that area need to be prepared for, I'd say, a knock on the door. So they'll be preparing testing, doing laboratory reports, and the results will be provided to the residents in summary. So be aware that that people are going to be, again, in the area knocking on doors to see if they can have access to your, sorry, Bob?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bell.
So PFAS testing is going to be done of all of the houses around the landfill area, or just the ones that are on the water line?
Well, it says just down gradient, so I don't know all the properties that down gradient of the land, but if you, as I say, I'm having technological issues.
Is it within like a 500-foot area? Is it,
Yeah.
I mean,
Bob, I'll have to get you that information a little more in detail. I can get that to you in the next day or two.
I mean,
I don't
and then
wanna-
that doesn't
I
go.
don't want to give you bad information.
No,
that's
I
gonna
understand
cause
that, but
issues.
the way the email wasn't really, it's like, all right, well, it's going to be done, but, I mean, some people would kind of like to know what the area is actually for it when you say down gradient. The other thing is that
Well, the
the
people-
town has,
right,
the town has,
who are going to be subject to, or to testing, they're being sent this specific notice,
okay.
which is the notice I forwarded to the board this morning. So,
And has the town wells already been tested now?
again, I'll have to check with Dave.
Okay.
Tom. I don't want to give you bad information. Okay, Route 44 project update. Our committee continues to meet on a every other week basis. One of the concerns we've had all along, obviously, is the issue of fire protection, water source availability. Recently, the proponent has forwarded to the fire department a proposal on utilization of water that is really in the early stages of review by the chief and the fire science engineer that's employed by the town through the chief. And it does not necessarily address the capital costs associated with water suppression, water supply. It does really more tends to address the actual water supply itself and pressure. It's likely not going to be all that adequate for the chief. It's just going to be a piece of what has to be considered. I think one of the frustrations that we have is that there is not a lot of contact with the, not a lot of forthcoming from the proponent, from Hillwood at this time. The RDA has set up a capability web capability that would allow for information and Q&A from the public. Once again, though, you have to have some information to share, and again, that's been a little bit frustrating. So I will be reaching out to our primary contact there the next day or two to see if he can give us any indication as to how quickly they plan to move this along. What I think we've all, it's really not a frustration. I think it's more of an observation, is that the current developer is not necessarily in a big hurry. So whatever the dynamics are with that company and whatever projects they have or whatever agreements they have with the landowner, they don't seem to be in a big hurry. On one hand, it's a little frustrating for us. On the other hand, we can't, we don't need this project, okay? We don't need this. There is going to be something forthcoming. It's going to be significant. As far as the timetable, I think we're all in the same boat, wondering what's happening. We go through periods of really weeks, month at a time, where there's nothing forthcoming. And then again, last week, Chief gets a letter regarding fire suppression, water source, which is obviously a huge deal here. So again, a little frustrating, a little bit slow, somewhat frustrating. But again, it's going to be ongoing, and I have some some additional calls to make to see what information that may be forthcoming. And I think realistically, what we're interested in is to see if they have a time frame that they can share with us. I don't know that they would, but I think that's, if we can at least get that type of information, it would be helpful. And I would invite Mark or Sarah to also chime in on that if you think there's anything else that needs to be stated. Okay.
I think you summarized it pretty well.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
for myself, I think you've
Okay,
summarized it pretty well.
All right. The Montello Street interchange, the Mass Works update, just keeping this brief, as, the project was intended or projected to start as early as October 15th. That wasn't a hard, fast timeline. As of right now, I think any of you who drive up in North Carver, you haven't seen anything happening yet, but the beginning of that project is imminent. From an administrative issue, with the town planner position being vacant, a lot of the administrative work and updates and bills processing and auditing has really fallen to our office, and Elaine is really doing a very good job with that. So another administrative burden that we have to deal with. And our town planner position, and I believe it's about 3 weeks, that position closes. The opening for that position closes. One of the concerns we have right now, again, is the planning board doing their day-to-day business and getting through meetings in a competent manner. We will be, Jim Walsh will be helping us out in a short term, just a very, very part-time manner. Not in person, by telecommunication, et cetera, Zoom and telephone, just to, again, administratively to keep some things moving. So we appreciate that. And 149 and 152 Plymouth Streets, the deadline has, I think I may have informed the board previously that our attorney has been authorized to follow up with these addresses and to essentially send them the same letters they've received from the town, but in this case, it's, with the threat of litigation. So it's the next step in the process to compliance. It's not always quick, but that's where it is. It's in the hands of town council right now.
Can I ask?
Sure.
Where are we at, like, specifically on that dates and letters and stuff? Because I know earlier today, I haven't had a chance to read it, but we all got an email from a resident about those two properties.
Yes,
So
I
haven't-
saw that. So I didn't come here with the letters, that specific letters that were, so I will get you the specific dates and where those each stand. And so I'd rather, again, I don't want to give you bad information. I'd rather look it up and get back to you.
Yeah,
with
can
the-
you let us know when they
Sure.
were? Because I know that was helpful in the past, when I had asked you, and the 30 days, so you sent us, it was sent this day, you have until this day. I'd like
Yeah.
to know that, so, thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
and-
Chairman,
Mr. Belvin.
if you would, could I read the letter that was presented to us as the Board of Selectmen by Mr. Shea?
Yeah, was that today?
We got it tonight
Yeah.
at
I
4:20.
probably didn't have a
Yeah,
chance
we
to see
just-
my email.
Saw it tonight, too.
Sure.
May I? This is from Cornelius Shea regarding 149 Plymouth Street. And this is his email. An illegal commercial enterprise is operating on the premises as noted by the building inspector during an inspection in 2017. A machine shop, repair, sales, storage of commercial equipment is located in the former garage, which no longer falls on any special zoning other than residential agriculture. The house and yard have become a danger physically in regards to water and land contamination, vermin, as well as to health and safety of the public. The main building could fall into the street and also contains lead paint and pipes, as well as potential for asbestos based on historic age of the structure. The yard itself is an eyesore and a safety issue, and there should be concerns over contamination of the local wells and air. Innumerable unregistered vehicles, transport trailers, commercial machines stored on the premises are in direct violation of our bylaws. The noise alone is an issue. I should not have to look at an Ames billboard in front of my house. The loading and unloading of equipment on Plymouth Street by tractor trailer is a very real hazard. The recent addition of a guardhouse and a fence exceeding 6 feet in height. The property is uninhabitable and not being used for either residential or agriculture. The property is recognized by the town as a hazard and a life to property. I'm also concerned with the bicycles showing up laden that what appears to be scrap metal, leaving empty. The activities are in direct conflict with zoning bylaws, 2230, 2240, so on, okay? So he brought up other bylaws. And then on 152 Plymouth Street has been illegally operated as a commercial landscaping business and used car lot, plate swapping, attaching plates, using Florida transport plates for the last year. The constant noise, particulates, and dust from commercial activities, earth removal, backup alarms, headlights, to the living areas of my house, industrial machines and unreasonably loud noises from the unpermitted metal storage shed from 6:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, 7 days a week, are a direct invasion of our privacy and rights to peaceful enjoyment of our property. This has happened 3 times in the last week, not including the constant noise of multiple large machines all day on Sundays, creating particulate clouds and vibrating my house. The dumping and burning of commercial waste, the asphalt of significant portion of the property, the unpermitted curb cut dumps measurable amounts of dirt and rock and debris into the roadway and drainage. Not to mention almost being killed by both a front loader and a tractor trailer backing out the property without taking the proper precautions. Again, he cites the different zoning issues in our bylaws. This is important for me to read this out, not just for that resident, but for all residents, that we need to be vigilant on properties that are not in compliance.
We do, and Mr. LaFond, we are pursuing action down there, correct?
That is correct, yes, yes. And of course,
Thank you.
having the tools to do that is obviously something we did not have previously, so I think,
And if I may interject, one of the tools to get this done was having a full-time building commissioner, because that person is our zoning enforcement officer. So when we didn't have that, we weren't able to do what's happening now. So that's his job, is to take care of that.
and I don't know why that would have ever changed personally, but that's
Thank you.
my editorial statement.
All right.
Rick, I just had a quick question on the town planner position update. Does Serped help at all? Are they a resource for the planning board if they need some help?
Well, they are, we'll put it this way, if they have the time, but they only have so many hours available for the local government technical assistance program, and it could be done on a contract basis, but they have to have someone available, and they have to have somebody. They're regional planning people. They're not local, planning board type of, and this is not in any way, this isn't an insult, but the background that they tend to have is the background of Jim Walsh, who's more of a regional planner as opposed to, a local, planning board administrator. So that's why I'm happy Jim's able to help us out a little bit, help Bruce out, help get Bruce through some of these short-term issues while we wait for the position to be filled. So again, it did inquire to one of our contacts over there, even inquired to Old Colony Planning Council to see if they had anybody in particular. But again, I know a lot of these regional planners, and it tends to not be what they do. But we did do some outreach, though.
Yeah, because I thought that back when I was on the planning board, when we were in between town planners, that we had utilized their services for some, when needed.
Right, and again, if they have the right resources available, yeah, but.
If I may, at one point, we did do that when we lost a town planner. This was years ago. We used someone who was at Serpent, but it was only because he served on his planning board in his town, so he knew how all the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts went, as opposed to being more of the big picture guy.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
It's niche-y. It's a niche, no doubt.
Thank you, Mr. LaFont. All right, moving along. Minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. We have a number of Edaville Railroad one-day special license requests, November 12th, 13th, 14th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 26th, 27th, 28th, and December 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 23rd, 24th, 26th, 30th, and 31st, and January 1st. The hours on these are 2 to 9 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve all these one-day special liquor licenses.
Second?
Second, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Our next meeting will be November 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. Approval of the minutes of October 5th, 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of October 5th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Just so you guys know, I emailed Elaine like this afternoon with 2 super duper easy changes for them. Page 3, she said she would get them in here but couldn't get them out. Okay, so page 3, the paragraph that starts with Bogart. All I did was change Bogart, read a statement. She would like to appoint someone she's confident in. I was not for a person, but it's supposed to say not just for any person. Did you get those changes, Elaine? Yeah, I emailed everybody. Oh, okay, okay. Oh, and then there was just one on page 13 when Sarah had asked her question of the select board, the school committee people, just a few words were left out.
All right.
Was it the top of page 12? Hewens, why do you want to run for school committee? And then just loves people, kids are grown. I think it just needed to say, Beaulieu stated she loves people.
Okay. Mr. Belvin, does your motion include those?
I'll make that
I
friendly
have,
motion to
I
change.
have 2 short amendments as well.
Okay.
Page 2, in the middle of the page, just above the topic of deed amendment from the redevelopment authority, paragraph starts, Hoffman asked when the chapter land committee should send the form to the select board. On the second sentence, Hewen stated that the chapter land, the whole rest of that sentence should go. What I said was that the chapter land committee are town department heads and our experts. Their memo is their recommendation to the select board, period. And the rest of that's fine. And then on page 3, near the top, 4th sort of paragraph, Hewen stated that a vote to reopen the search, that paragraph. Townsend said that the motion is within the scope, and then you need to add a sentence that says, Hewen stated again that reopening the search is not on the agenda, and then Hoffman rescinded his motion.
Okay. Mr. Belvin, would you amend your?
I'll change my motion to include those additions to the October 5th, 2021.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Approval of the executive session minutes of May 4th, 2021.
I'll make a motion, we approve all 3, 5/4/21, 7/12/21, and 7/20/21
Okay. For release.
for release.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Could I request this put off to the next meeting? I did get a chance to read all of those.
I think we probably should try to get those approved at this meeting. We could take a 5-minute recess if you'd like to review those minutes. We have them here, correct? Would you like a 5-minute recess to take a look at those minutes?
Sure.
All right, why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Approval of the executive session minutes of May 4th, 2021, 7/12/2021, and 7/20/21. We have a motion to approve by Mr. Belvin. I'm sorry, did we have a second on that? We have a second from Ms. Ewens. Discussion?
Thank you for giving me that 5 minutes. Appreciate it.
No problem. Any discussion on these minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Approval of the executive session minutes of June 15th, 2021, not for release.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. And next, we have a request for parking permits at Sampson's Pond Fishing Tournament, East Side Sport Fishing Club, on August 7th, 2022, from 5:30 a.m. to 11 a.m.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second?
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Select Board Community Announcements. Mr. Hoffman?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Belvin? Ms. Bogart? Mr. Belvin?
All right. All righty. So, we're doing community announcements first,
Yes.
right? Yeah, okay. So my community announcement is this. The first one is, it is hunting season now. Archery season is going on now. If you're gonna go take a walk through the woods with your dogs, wear hunter orange, please, for not only you, but your dogs also, and keep them on a leash. It's half hour before sunrise and a half an hour after sunset. So just be aware that they're out there, okay? The next one is the Boy Scouts, because I must have missed this on Facebook, but they started their bottle and can drive. It's out behind the EMS building. So if you have bottles and cans, please put them out there. It helps them out. Please don't do any trash or water bottles or milk bottles, jugs like that. This is just for redeemable plastics and glass and aluminums. My final one here is I want to congratulate our town clerk, Kara Dahill. She has attained her certification in town clerk. She's been working on this for a long time. It's the epitome of a town clerk to have this certification. She's worked hard, and she's learned a lot, and everything she learns, she brings back to this town. So right now, she's a very valuable asset to our town right now, because she has went through all the hoops to get this done. So I want to thank her very much.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. Ms. Ewens?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing at this time.
All right. And I just wanted to congratulate the town clerk as well, because that's quite an accomplishment. So moving on, Select Board notes. Mr. Belvin?
All right. This is kind of a broad spectrum of town-owned property. Town-owned property, it's not just the towns, it's all of ours. And being all of ours, we have to make sure that we protect it. Everyone has this duty to protect our lands, from trash and dumping, cutting of trees. And one of these, I took a walk down, again, on Wade Street, and I brought this up in the past. The abutters are using the access from Wade Street, and they're using it for their own driveway back there. The camera's still up. Walls make it look like it's their property. So it's not inviting to people to say, hey, this is town property. It more looks like their property. And it may dissuade people from going down there and using town property. So I think something needs to be done about that. So that's it. Again, it's hunting season. Be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the open session of our meeting and reconvene in executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining negotiations with unions, dispatchers, and police that may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town if held in open session, and not to return to open session.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Hoffman?
Jim Hoffman says aye.
Jim Bogart says aye.
Robert Belvin says aye.
Sarah Hewen says aye.
And Mark Townsend says aye. We are adjourned.